Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to Season 4, Episode 7 of Bell to Bell with Bobby Blaze. I am your host, Professor Jeremy Vilmur, and joining us now, Bobby Blaze. What's happening, Bobby?
Hey, Professor, man, we're doing it. We're going to start off slow and taper down, brother. Yeah, I'm here, man. We're going to kick this show off right, I hope. You know, we've been doing the pre-NWA, NWA, AWA, and now we're up to the we're going to say WWE, but we're going to go back as far as the WWF. So that's Worldwide Wrestling Federation this week, /
right.
WWE, since that's what most of the fans know it as of now.
Yes.
So, yeah.
Matter of fact, I think Buddy Rogers was even pre-WWF. I think he was Capital Wrestling Corporation or whatever.
Oh, okay.
I think. Cool. I would need to double check that, so don't quote me. But yeah, I think we even go back before the WWW. I lost track.
Yeah.
But anyhow,
3 W's and an F. Yeah.
That's it. We are going to talk about the WWE's world title and 5 most consequential champions. We give a little bit of a history on the title, kind of go from there. But Bobby, I do want to cover real quick before we get started on that. Apparently the WWE has signed Tessa Blanchard.
Oh, is that right?
Yep. I just saw it on Twitter like 6 minutes ago, I think.
Well, when we took that little break pre-recording there, I was like, I wonder if anything's going on. And I did a quick scan and I didn't see anything. So I'm glad you found something. Well, hopefully they'll use her right, you know. Huge star potential and one of, if not one of the best U.S. workers in the world right now. Put her up there, Charlotte. That'd be good, right?
Oh, I would think so. And, you know, and that 4 horsewomen thing starts to become a little closer to.
Oh, yeah. Nice. I heard Jericho had a list of 5 people that he wants to bring in eventually, so we'll see what happens there. I know one of them was Cesaro.
Oh, yeah.
And, I think that guy's so damn awesome, man. I'd like to see him. I don't know, it just seems like right when he's ever getting a push in WWE or whatever, or when I've seen it, man, he'll go out there and tear the house down. He's building, and then boom, they just taper him off, like I said earlier, you know.
Yep.
But I'd like to see him go somewhere. And even though I don't watch that product, we do keep up with it, as we talked about before. But, yeah, that's interesting that Tessa's going there, too. So, good.
Yeah. And, oh, yeah, I guess the other thing we'll hit real quick, the AEW side signed Eddie Kingston.
I thought his first promo, I saw that first promo he did. I really thought he knocked it out of the ballpark, man.
Yeah.
He tore it up. And I'm happy for him. You know, he's been in the business like 18 years. I don't know him or anything, but I'm like, holy cow. He just tore that promo up the very first week he debuted. And I guess he did it good again this week. I don't know. I didn't follow this week's, but I know he did sign, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, that is. I mean, it sucks for the NWA, but they can't do anything right now anyway, so these guys...
That's what I was going to bring up next, man. That NWA deal, Jeremy. You know, we was on that bandwagon from day one. That's our group. And... just, you know, things are real stagnant right now. It's out of their control at this point.
Yeah, it really is.
Hopefully something good's going to happen, you know.
Yeah, I hope so,
We'll see.
because I really liked what they were doing.
I did too, and I tell you, we kind of briefly talked about this last week, I think, if not before the NWA week. Nick Aldis, we brought him up. These people have to be getting paid. I'm sure, you know, the owners are, you know, taking care of the talent is all I can hope for, because if not, have boostable travel, it may be time for Aldis or whoever else to say, you know, I got to get a paycheck, boss. I'm going to sign with WWE or AEW or whoever's interested in me, you know.
I think Nick Aldis is in kind of a rare spot. He's married to Mickie James, who is a, you know, almost a 20-year veteran of pro wrestling.
Yeah.
She is a singer. I mean, this chick hustles 24/7. He might be able to absorb downtime. Okay. He might be able to absorb enough downtime that it may not be that big of a deal, because, you know, he made a big commitment to the NWA, and he you know, he's made a big deal about wanting to see it through, you know.
Good.
Yeah,
well, I hope something takes off for them real soon, though, as a fan, you know.
Yeah.
Talked about. Yeah, that's cool. That's really good news. I got one shout out this week. One of our listeners, I heard from one of them. My brother told me, hey, Larry, hope you're out there doing all right, man. Larry's a really good dude, and met him through my brother, had dinner with him. Maybe get to see him again here soon with depending on what the hell is going on outside here, you know, with the corona and all that.
Yeah.
As far as meeting up at a restaurant again or whatever. But hell, we might have to go through a drive-through like McDonald's, let's go to the park and eat it. But I just want to give him a shout out there because he's out there busting his butt in the heat, and he puts some headphones on and cranks up the Bell to Bell Bobby Blaze podcast. So we appreciate that, and we appreciate all the listeners and wrestling fans that do tune in, because we know you've got so many podcasts, and I love podcasts. I listen to about 5 or 6 different ones every week, and some of them 2 and 3 times. You know, I listen to our playback just to make sure it sounds okay. But man, we know you can choose podcast anywhere, but we're glad you're listening to ours, and make sure you tell a friend about us too. Our numbers are starting to grow again. The professor gave me an update. We're not where we were at pre-corona and pre-little break that we had to take there, but we're getting back up there, and so please be sure and tell a friend about the podcast, especially if you like old school wrestling. I think anyone who likes old school wrestling will like our podcast. And people just, it's like 2 guys talking, a professor and Bobby sitting here talking. We're, you know, just like guys at the bar or riding on a road trip, and we just want you to feel like, hey, come along for a ride, man. We're all just going to have a good time here, you know. Feel at home here.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, everybody, for listening. It is nice to have the opportunity to record this show again. And,
yes.
You know, thank you guys who have indulged us by sticking around so long. All right, Bobby. So that being said, let's dive into the WWE, as it is called now. Let's
do so. I know you're going to talk a little bit about belts right off the bat, maybe, because I know you're a belt man.
Well, let's be careful there. I do like the belts, but I don't believe in carrying them around as a fan in public.
Exactly. And I know you got the NWA replica belt, right?
Yes, I do. It's the only
one
I own.
You have.
Yeah.
But you don't walk around defending it.
No. Matter of fact, I was going to take it to get Sting to sign it, and then I thought, you know what? I don't want to carry this fucking thing around in public. So I didn't do that.
You could carry one of these WWE ones around if you'd like. We'll give you a choice of some of the ones you've listed here that you might like to carry around as a fan or as a wrestler.
All right. Well, let's start with the one that Buddy Rogers had.
Okay.
What they did was they took their old United States title and put a plate on it that said World Champion. And that was the belt that Buddy Rogers wore as world champion.
Okay.
And it's worth noticing here, because this does change a couple times. He was the world champion and not the promotional champion, because that does switch again.
Okay.
The next belt that they made was what we are going to call the Bruno Sammartino belt. This was actually kind of an attractive belt. It had a tall center plate. It was black and gold. It, I believe, had the initials WWWF on it and said world champion. That was a nice looking belt. I actually like that one. Usually you will see pictures. Usually when you see a picture, that is the belt that Bruno has, even though he possessed more than just that one.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then you get into Pedro Morales, and I think they gave him a new belt every couple of weeks. Because he went through a bunch of them. There's that ugly, I don't know if you've seen this one, the green and blue one.
No, I was just going by. I was looked at the notes there and started laughing when I knew what you were going to say.
Jesus Christ. This thing, it's got I think it was a blue, it looks like blue satin or something is where the leather would be. And then it has green trim on that.
Okay.
I mean, it looks like, do you remember those ugly ass curtains that the people had back in the 70s?
Oh, kind of like the ones I have in my home right now.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, like yours.
Rug.
Yeah.
yeah, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Kind of look like that.
I'm old enough to remember.
Me too. Pedro also had another one. Now this one starts heading back in a nice direction. The problem with this one is it was a gold belt with a big silver eagle, but the silver eagle looked like the Nazi Reichstag or what
geez.
Yeah, it looked like a Nazi eagle. So they redesigned it. Now we're going to get into what they call the Billy Graham belt. When you see Billy Graham, this is the belt you usually see him with, and it looks a lot like the NWA tag team titles that the Rock and Roll Express had.
Okay, that's the one where you're at right now is where I've started to become familiar with them, with the Billy Graham belt.
Yeah, so, 2 guys wrestling on the top of an eagle. Very, very pronounced as far as like the third dimension on it. It looks like a sculpture, basically. That one is probably the one that most people would be familiar with during this time period. That one was also used by Bob Backlund. But getting into Bob Backlund, we get into what they call the big green belt.
The big green belt, yep.
Oh, Jesus, this thing was ugly as sin. This was one, Bob Backlund wore it, the Iron Sheik had it, and it's the one that Hulk Hogan won.
All right.
Man, that thing was ugly. I mean, it looked like the 24/7 title, but not as attractive.
Yeah, I Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you.
Not a whole lot to say about that one.
Yeah.
And then we get into the Hogan 84 and 85. Basically, they look like the TV title that Arn and Tully would have in the NWA, you know, where it's very boilerplate, you know, the eagle, the banners of the wrestling ring. Nice looking belt, but when your competition has it as their national title and their TV title, it does kind of bring your world title down a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Then we get into the 86, which was more of a standard looking belt. Just a big globe on it. I believe WCCW's world title was very similar to it. And also it's one that they had to make a Andre version of it because when they put Andre versus Hogan for the title, if Andre decides to beat you, you can't stop him.
Right.
And, so they went ahead and made a belt just in case.
Right. And getting ahead of ourselves, I rewatched that match earlier this morning between Andre and Hogan. And we'll get into that a little bit later on in our podcast. But yeah, so so they had a backup belt for him just in case he didn't say yes, boss.
That was pretty much it. Because no matter how big and strong you are, if Andre the Giant decided you weren't going to win, you were not going to win.
Right.
Period.
I got you.
Yeah. After that, we get to the Winged Eagle, which I would say is probably one of the most iconic of the WWE's title belts.
Yeah.
You know, probably mostly associated with Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels, I would think.
I'm drawing a blank, man. I'm sitting there.
Yeah, no problem.
Trying to keep my phone from falling off the damn table. It almost started vibrating. I thought it was going to interrupt the podcast. I got it on silent, but I had it on the table, and it's still.
Yeah.
Yeah. So familiar with the Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels belt.
Yep. And then we end up, and I guess the Ultimate Warrior and Hogan, you know, would probably be tied in there as well. Then we end up with the Big Eagle, which I think kind of signals us going into the Attitude Era. This one, when I see it, it makes me think of Stone Cold and The Rock.
Okay.
Who would then both, of course, have their own custom belts.
Right.
The bowl, the Brahma Bowl for The Rock, and the skull, and the Smoking Skull, I believe is what they call it for Stone Cold. After that, we get into the Undisputed Era, which I think of two people. I think of Brock Lesnar and Chris Jericho.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think of Jericho right off the bat on that one. Of course, Brock too, but Jericho wasn't he
He's the guy
first that unified them, right? During that era, correct?
Yep, he was the guy that first did that. Then we get into what I think might be the ugliest piece of shit I can think of.
24/7 belt.
Oh, okay. Second ugliest.
Okay.
The spinner belt, the John Cena spinner belt, which I think might be the longest lived belt on this list.
Is that right?
It was around for 8 years.
Which
is a long damn time for that ugly. I mean, that thing probably cost a fortune because it was such a chunky piece of shit, but, you know, they had to be amortized over a decade to get their money out of it. And then we end up in the company logo era of belts, which I am not a fan.
Yeah, I'm not either. I hardly ever watched the product. What am I going, you know?
And it looks like a class ring or something. I'm just not feeling it, you know?
I think you've mentioned that before, the class ring. I think that's a good vibe for it right there. It looks like a class ring, goes around your waist.
Just not a fan of it. So those are the major designs of the title belt. And then I got a few facts we can drop, and then we can get into the personalities.
Yeah, get us all caught up here. I know you've got some different things to bring up.
There's been a lot of people who've been the WWE champion over time and a lot of things that come along with that. But initially it was created in 1963 because the NWA didn't want to put the title on Buddy Rogers again because he rarely left the Northeast. And the NWA wanted a traveling champion, so Toots Mond and Vince McMahon Sr. withdrew from the NWA and named Buddy Rogers their first WWF or CWC, whichever it was, champion. And also started the tradition of the Battle Royal tournaments in Rio de Janeiro, where all their title belts would eventually come from.
Yeah, because that's where the Intercontinental Championship came from, correct?
Pat Patterson.
Pat Patterson won it down there, like 78 or something, whatever the year was, and I don't know what year it was, but the big tournament took place there, so...
Yeah, I believe the story there was he unified the North American and the South American title.
Okay.
The totally
it's
factual.
Not a work, people, with a straight shoot. Yeah.
The totally factual titles. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Interesting. At one point, the WWF rejoined the NWA and dropped the word world from their title. Upon rejoining with the NWA, some point in the 70s that happened, I believe. PWI deranked the WWF world title in 1982, saying that they only defended in the Northeast against their own guys, so it is not a world title.
And that's why we like the NWA. When we go back comparing champions, we're not going to take away any of these champions on our list today. The thing is, most of those guys defended that title up and down that northeastern, corridor of the United States. And with the NWA champion, of course, AWA was, defended pretty much worldwide as well. But the NWA, that champion, he went to every territory in the United States and Japan and Australia and Mexico, around the world. He was a world champion. That's why we emphasized a whole lot that we, really enjoyed that NWA title, and why that title to us as fans, it was the real world title. And I didn't even realize that the PWI had stopped ranking them in 82. Really, I didn't even know that. So thanks for bringing that to my attention. But yeah, that's true. They mostly defended that title just up in that Northeast, all those northeastern cities. New York, of course, being the big market, and Baltimore and D.C. and Philly and those places. Boston and things. But that's where a lot of people live. They drew huge crowds in that area too. That's the thing.
Yep.
So anyway, go on. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no problem. I appreciate your input. And in 1985, they added it back to the list because by that point they employed so many of the wrestlers and had gotten into so many territories on their own that they basically were defending on a worldwide basis again.
Yeah, and they were traveling throughout the United States at that point. I mean, that's the thing. They got out of that northeastern corner and they started going to the bigger markets. Not that they didn't go in the past, but they didn't go as regular as once they become, quote again, worldwide. They started taking over the territories that we've talked about in the past before. So anyway, good stuff, man. Good stuff.
All right.
So the first champion. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, go ahead.
I know you talked about this man before, Buddy Rogers. You brought him up.
Probably the NWA.
NWA one. Okay, yeah. I think we had him on that list for there. So here's a name that's going to come up again, but he's the first champion. It's Buddy Rogers. So oldest champion was Vince McMahon, Mr. McMahon, 54 years old and 21 days. That to me is wild. And if you remember, Jeremy, what kind of conditioning and shape he was in for that.
Yeah.
I mean, Vince, I think one of them bosses that probably said, look, I'm not asking anyone in this company to do anything I wouldn't do, and I'll do what you do. And I think that's pretty damn ballsy. And that Mr. McMahon character, it got over huge. We've actually had him on a list before as a commentator too.
Yep.
So we're not here browbeating. I just want to kind of preface it. Some of the stuff we may say in the next little bit.
Yeah.
We're not going to browbeat or shit on the WWF a whole lot, but Jeremy and I was talking off the air here, and of course let me put this up. Thank you for all the notes, Professor. We've combined some, but you had about 75% of these this week, and I appreciate it very much. But we just we may be bigger fans of other organizations than we are to WWE. So if we say something a little bit out of character for us today, because I don't know how much of a heel Jeremy's going to be today, but Professor so far has kept it really professional, and I respect that. But yeah, so anyway, we got I was just getting to the point of McMahon being the oldest champion. Take it from there, Jeremy. Who's the youngest champion?
The youngest champion would have been, was it Brock Lesnar is who I had on the list, but wasn't Randy Orton younger than him?
I thought Randy Orton was about 22 or 23 when he got it. I know it listed 25 and 44 days for Brock, but I'm pretty sure, and y'all can fact check us out there, hit us up if you want. I thought Randy Orton was younger.
Yeah, I think Randy Orton. I think I got the wrong name on here.
Yeah, pretty sure it's Randy.
Yeah. Yeah, because you know what? That was a big deal when Brock left. They wanted to put it on somebody younger, and it was Randy Orton. That's absolutely true. I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah. Well, this is what I get for using Wikipedia as one of my sources.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. But someone probably went in there and changed that, right when you was getting your notes.
Probably.
But yeah, I'm pretty sure it's Randy. In all seriousness.
Yep. Then we go to heaviest. Who was that?
Yokozuna.
Yep.
However you say Yokozuna. 568 pounds. Man, that's incredible. And that guy can move still, man. I mean, he's big as a sumo, but he moved a hell of a lot more space than a sumo wrestler had to move, Damn, man. What a big guy. How he didn't hurt someone or crush someone's chest, I don't know.
I don't know. I don't know, because that guy was carrying a lot of mass around, and I don't know, I don't know how you would do that without, because all it would take is a slight fuck up and you could kill somebody. Yeah.
This shows how talented he was, though.
Yeah.
So he's the heaviest. Who was the lightest?
The lightest would be Rey Mysterio Jr. at 175 pounds.
And hell of a performer, worker, wrestler, what do you want to say in that? That guy can get over, man. And
move. I mean, now, of course, he's still a youngish man and he can barely walk because of some of this shit, but, still, I mean, he was, in his day, he was incredible. I mean, he still is now. I mean, to be honest. Longest reigning, who would that have been?
Oh, that would have been a great Bruno Sammartino for 2,803 days. I knew it was a shitload of days. I didn't know how many until you wrote it down there. But yeah, Bruno, of course, he was their champion for years. That's where the money was on him, man.
Well, I was going to say just real quick there, I think the only people that are in that kind of time frame with a world title are Bruno, Luthez, and of course Vern Gagne.
Yeah.
Who Good are call. Just that nearly 3,000 days as champion. I think those are the only three that are in there.
And that's immediately who would come to my mind, and I think most of our fans might be those three as well.
Yeah.
So, good deal. And the shortest title reign?
That would be Andre the Giant, and the time I've got here is 1 minute, 48 seconds, which is a very short period of time to be champion.
And that's when he handed over DiBiase, correct?
Yes, that would be when he just gave it away.
There you go. So it could have been 2 minutes, folks. We don't know.
Yeah, I think there might be a little lag time in there somewhere.
Kind of a brief rundown of the WWE belts there. I know we've got a couple of mentions before we get into our top five, who we feel, quintessential champions of the WWE. For that, though, Jeremy, how about you tell us a little bit about, I'm drawing a blank, Anchor FM. I'm sorry, I don't have my notes in front of me.
Oh, yeah.
But why don't you tell the fans a little bit about Anchor FM if you don't care. There you go. Okay, let's go on to our mentions, and I guess I'll go from here because you've done most of the talking here for all your fact-checking notes, which, again, I sincerely appreciate. I'm going to mention a man here that was a WWF champion that probably didn't get enough recognition as the WWF champion. A lot of people come to know who he was through the years. I found it really funny what it said on the Wikipedia page about him. This is Ivan Koloff, also known as a Russian Bear, and he beat Bruno Sammartino. So, with that said, what I found was funny was on the wiki page, it said that the great Ivan Koloff, the Russian Bear himself, was best known for his WWF title win. I don't think that's true at all. Do you?
I don't think so, and I think we'd have to talk to Nikita and Crusher Khrushchev to make sure, but I knew, I was probably in my 30s before I even knew he had ever been WWF champion.
I think I was already in the business before I knew it, too. I mean, being around the boys and stuff. But, yeah, apparently, not apparently, in January 18th, 1971, Koloff defeated Sammartino in Madison Square Garden after a pinfall from a knee drop from the top rope. Ending Sammartino's 7 2/3 years reign. So that's pretty cool. Of course, Koloff lost the championship 21 days later to Pedro Morales. So he was a transitional champion, if you will. But nonetheless, he was a fucking WWF champion, and he should be in a Hall of Fame. He should be in every Hall of Fame there is. Here's the thing. You said, our fans, I guarantee you, they know him outside of just being the WWF champion beating Bruno. That's a great accomplishment. But man, he was a hell of a performer. He took his gimmick so serious. He had that tattoo on his arm of the sickle cutting off the eagle head. I mean, you just talk about getting over as the years and years of the evil Russian Empire, the great Ivan Koloff, who become Uncle Ivan to so many people throughout the years as he got older, of course. But I think we need to give him a little bit of recognition. That's why I put him on my honorable mentions list there. That was my guy for honorable mentions, folks.
Could you imagine being in Madison Square Garden on the night Bruno Sammartino lost the title to a commie?
Yes, in 1971.
Jesus Christ, that would have been, I'm surprised we don't hear about the riots that night,
We all just know who he is, and I think he deserves, more. I don't know why he's not in their, Hall of Fame or whatever. I don't know if there's any heat there, what the whole deal was or whatever. But, man, he's a well-deserving man, a great champion, and, of course, just very well thought of throughout the industry. I know that. Very well respected.
Okay, so my honorable mention is going to go to Hossein Khosrow Ali Vaziri, better known as the Iron Sheik, or Sheiky Baby.
Ah, Sheiky Baby. Good one. Good one, Professor.
This guy is just oozing with legit wrestling background. I believe he was on the Olympic training team. He trained wrestlers. He was a bodyguard for the fucking Shah of Iran before the revolution. Yep. And what shocked me, I didn't know this. He's part of that Minnesota crew.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I knew that. He trained up there burning them. I think also Billy Robinson, he trained with them guys up there. Always used to do the Hindu squats and stuff. I've heard that he was really, I've met him a couple of times. And he used to do the clubs, of course. Everyone knows him with the Iranian, the Indian clubs, doing the clubs over his head to train with and stuff like that. I was on a couple of shows with him up in Ohio as well as down in Georgia. Just a funny guy to be around. Make you laugh in the locker room, just like what you see. Of course, he's getting up in his years now, but really a funny guy. I know I was in a locker room in Columbus, Ohio, actually, and he was talking about the clubs, and there was a couple younger guys in the locker room. Of course, none of us tried them or anything like that. I hadn't been to Japan yet because that's where I learned to work them out when I was over there. But he had these huge clubs. He started talking about no one do, because he was going to do the contest out there in the ring where to, do the fan challenge. And I said, Sheik, no disrespect. I just met him that day, and we're just talking in the locker room, the heel locker room. I said, no disrespect, but I do know a man that can do those clubs. And he just looked at me, oh yeah, and like how he talks. And I said, yeah, and I said, he said, no man, and I think he knew, like just ribbing around, ribbing the guys. And I said, yeah, I said, I think I do. And he looked at me and I said, Carl Gotch. He goes, oh, goddamn Carl Gotch. He could do anything. And he just started putting over Carl about, he could do this and he could do that. And it's just really funny, man, because he changed his tune. He goes, Carl? And I said, well, I don't know him, but I've met him several times down in Tampa. And I sit there and had a real nice conversation with him. It's really just really funny. And then he's there like 3 days or whatever, and each night, it's kind of laughing. It was a good thing to be, to have that little bit of a connection that, he's up there traveling, doing his thing. And then I saw him at a show down in Georgia, Cordell, Georgia. I was down there for like Peachtree Wrestling way back in the day. And these kids come around the corner and they use the F word. Scott Steiner was down there. He's doing his biceps, pumping his biceps up. Sheik was out this outdoor show, by the way, just to know I'm going with. Sheik's out there doing his clubs, and these kids come around, teenagers, probably 13, 14, 15-year-old kids. They started yelling, this is the F word, the F word, So Sheiky put the gloves down. He goes, hot to it. What's wrong with you? You say a fake. Is your parents fake? Is your school fake? Is your books fake? Get the fuck out of here. And he just started browbeating these kids. They start like, just never forget, it's like in a sequence of, are your parents fake? Are your schools fake? Are your books fake? Get the fuck out of here.
That is so
funny. It's
funny.
just really funny, man, to be around him. Great guy. Training, I think AAU champion, world champion at AU. I think he was in the Pan American Games too, as like I said, training, coached some of the Olympic guys back in the day. Mm-hmm. Just great amateur background, like you said, legitimate too. Legitimate bodyguard.
Tough as nails, and of course, during the period of time, for younger people who don't remember this, but during the period of time where he became world champion, there had just been a revolution in Iran where it went from a friendly government that the British and Americans had put in place over there to a non-friendly religious theocracy that had taken a bunch of Americans hostage.
Yep. So
we're talking just heat all the way around. Probably one of the most hated men in the world in that profession at that time.
And I rewatched that match earlier today too, Hogan and the Sheik in Madison Square Garden. And I think we're going to talk about that a little bit later on down through here. So just the heat that he had, man. Heat from the Sheik.
Of course, he was a real brief champion. He was basically a way to get the title from Bob Backlund to Hulk Hogan. Backlund was not going to lose to a non-wrestler.
Right.
Matter of fact, they kind of went around Bob Backlund by having Arnold Scullin throw in the towel instead of having him quit or get pinned too. So they protected him. They protected him on his way out of the title scene there.
And I wish the business did that more and more nowadays too.
Yeah. Well,
this goes with what we're going to come to next. That's why I said that.
Yeah.
The next little segment is what, Jeremy?
Well, this is the grumpy old fans part where we're going to kind of talk about something. Bobby, doing the research for this episode, I discovered something about myself.
Yeah, what's that?
I'm not a huge fan of the WWE. Not nearly as big as I am of a fan of the NWA and the AWA anyways.
Yeah, I kind of found that too. And here we are, the grumpy old men. Like I said, I wish they had more respect, protected the business better, or the titles. Since we're talking titles, we'll say titles. Make them more meaningful stuff. Like you said, just brought up the throwing in the towel there to protect Backlund. That's what it should be. That's kind of, we was talking off there. I couldn't word it as nicely as you did. I went back and watched the Sheik Hogan match. To me, it's just like I tried to put myself in the mindset that I was when I actually watched it when it took place in 1984 when Hogan got the championship off the Sheik. Place is going nuts before the match, so to not take anything away from the wrestling, the world of wrestling, it's in Madison Square Garden, crowd's hot as fire, man. I mean, then I try to even go back to like if I was 10 years old watching that, just even younger. And I just really, the whole match is only like 5 minutes and 8 seconds. It's not a bad match. It's not a great match. To me, it's more like a cartoon match, and I don't mean that really disrespectfully, but I guess I am saying that because the wrestling I was used to and brought up on the way I think it should be is not who they book for. And of course, we're going back to 84 and I was just, like 20, 21 years old at that time.
Yeah.
I could just tell, that this wrestling was different because I only saw the WWF when I was 15 and then again when I was about 18. So I only saw it for a couple weeks when I was up east. Like I said, as a teenager for one summer, I saw it a few weeks there. But it wasn't until I got about 20, 21, around this time, 83, 84, I lived in Maryland for just maybe about 8 months or so. It just wasn't the same to me. And I watched that match today, and it still just wasn't the same. Not saying it wasn't a good match or anything. It made me realize what a fan I am of, like you said, the AWA and the NWA especially over the WWF and doing this research and stuff. And again, not here being the angry old man, but yeah, it's just one of those things. I don't know. Go on and grump a little bit, Jeremy. I don't know what to say because you've worded it and kind of talked me down from saying a few things before we went on the air about it.
There's a 5-minute rant of us on YouTube just going into why the WWE hates wrestling and all the evidence that we can put there.
Yeah.
There's a certain amount of,
Let me give out that address real quick. Okay?
Yeah.
On our YouTube channel, just so you know, if you go to tinyurl.com/BBBB video, you can find that rant on there, and it's a pretty damn good rant, man. I have to say, you got over that day huge as a heel. It was really killer. Just go to YouTube and type in, the Bobby Blaze, Bell to Bell Bobby Blaze podcast, but use that shortcut that our good friend Tex Johnson down in the Broiler Room set up for us. But we have the professor set up the tinyurl.com/BBBB video, and it'll take you to some of the work that Jeremy and I did behind the scenes and that the Tex put together on video that you can see our rant on this. But anyway, go ahead. I didn't interrupt. Just want to give out our YouTube
that's
listeners.
Yeah,
that's
totally
a good rant.
It is. I have to pat myself on the back a little bit for that because it's not one. I didn't have a plan to anything. There were no bullet points. I just kind of shot my mouth off.
We were just talking and you went off.
Yeah. So the thing is that, okay, and don't get me wrong, there's a reason the WWE exploded while everybody else didn't. I mean, this must have been like the product that people were looking for. Vince McMahon was a visionary and he was doing shit that nobody else could, predict or account for him taking a risk on. WrestleMania, everything he did paid off, but it's not for me. It's right. It's not something I enjoy. Especially, and the reason I wanted to hit this now is there's going to be a lack of recent WWE champions on here.
Yes.
And look, I mean, here's some things. Okay. John Cena's 16-time world champion. That was, it used to be a huge deal that Harley Race was an 8-time world champion. And just to shit on people's legacy, I think they threw it on to Cena 16 times, They don't protect their champions. They don't protect their titles. They don't protect the belts. They're a cheap fucking bauble used to get people over and sell a fucking trinket. That's all they are now.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's not to take anything from the hard work at John Cena, the hard work, respect, hustle, and all that. We're not saying that at all, man. The guy, he carried the company there for several years on his back, and just through the years, I won't say he's the best worker, but he's a hell of a good worker, and he works his ass off. Got a hell of a physique and can talk his ass off. So he's over in all three of what it takes to be a great wrestler. And I know he's moving on to movies and TV and everything else, and that's great. It's just that you're going to see there's an absence of some of the current day wrestlers on our list for a reason, and that's because the professor and myself are being grumpy old man, and I guess the best thing we can say is, get off my damn lawn,
Damn kids.
I'm a Miller. I drink Miller Lite. I don't have one right now, but I'll gladly take a PBR. Pass Blue Ribbon for you young kids out there, or whatever if you don't know what the fuck a PBR is, fuck you. You shouldn't be listening to this podcast. But I'll gladly sit there with my PBR and say, get off my lawn when it comes to professional wrestling.
That's it. That is it. That's kind of where we're starting from. Okay, Bobby, before we get into our special mention and our top 5 list, not only are you a podcaster, a former wrestler, a wrestling consultant, you are also an author.
Written a couple books and a couple of e-books and short stories. My first book is called Pin Me, Pay Me, Have Boots, Will Travel. If you'd like to get that book, let me tell you a way to get it. All my books are available on Amazon, but the great professor here has set up a little link. If you use this link, this podcast gets a little bit of kickback, and we appreciate any kind of kickback we can get. But if you go to tinyurl.com/BlazeBook1, that'll take you right to the Amazon link where you can get Pin Me, Pay Me, Have Boots, Will Travel. It talks about my breaking into the business, growing up, breaking into the business, some of the travels throughout the world to England, South Africa, Australia, Japan, and all these different trips I took, and working for Smoky Mountain Wrestling and the title, winning the title there, except. The second book is called I Kicked Out on 2, The Educational Wrestler. Once again, if you'd like to, you can get on Amazon. It's available on Kindle, download, or in print edition. And the way you can get a print edition that, again, would help this show get some kickback is this. Go to tinyurl.com/BlazeBook2, and we'd appreciate that very much. The professor will get a little bit of kickback from his Amazon affiliate account. He may or may not smile. I don't know. Sounds like he might not be smiling too much this week when we do this list. But I'll at least get a book sale, and I'll get a smile. And while I'm thinking about it, if you want to really give me a smile, if you read one of my books or one of my short stories, please leave a review. Just like you can leave a review for this podcast. We'd appreciate it very much. And that's my spew, man. So go out there, go to tinyurl.com/BlazeBook1 or tinyurl.com/BlazeBook2 and pick up a copy of either Pin Me, Pay Me, Have Boots, Will Travel, or I Kicked Out on 2, The Educational Wrestler. And we'd all be appreciative, and we'll all walk away at the end of the day a little bit more happy, hopefully, than what we may be now because we're grumpy old men.
This guy here, he was kind of the future of wrestling. He was ahead of his time. We're talking about superstar Billy Graham.
Yeah, man, it's the superstar. Yes.
Yeah, he was colorful. He was great on a mic. He was really the first, or one of the first, bodybuilder pro wrestlers who just came out and just looked like they were fucking chiseled out of granite,
Yeah. Well, he trained with Arnold Schwarzenegger, and I've heard a story early on about him walking on Venice Beach with the great Arnold Schwarzenegger, and all these fans just come running over there at Muscle Beach, and Arnold thought this for him because he was a Mr. Olympia, and he'd already won a couple of them at that point, and he thought all these fans were coming to see me, and they ran up and they saw the superstar, and they started putting over Superstar Graham when he was out there working in California. I thought that was pretty cool, man. Of course, he named after the Reverend Billy Graham out of respect for that. And also that song, Jesus Christ Superstar, and their superstar Billy Graham. Of course, he was a kayfabe brother of Dr. Jerry Graham, Eddie, and Luke Graham, and just basic an iconic figure in professional wrestling. We thought we better put him on this list just because, like you said, man, if it wasn't for him with the tie-dyes and the big muscles, and also learning to get not even learning, he probably did it naturally, getting over like he did with the speaking the way he did, one of those things. There probably wouldn't be a Hulk Hogan or Jesse Ventura or a lot of other guys
Scott
like
Steiner.
that. There you go. Yes, Big Papa Pump, Yeah, Graham beats Sammartino in 1977 in Baltimore, Maryland. He held it for 9.5 months. He wrestled throughout, all over the world. One of the other stories I heard about him was because he was a former football player too, and he tried out with I guess he worked out a little bit in the Dungeon with Stu, and Stu didn't like non-wrestlers, I guess, or footballers. And I heard, now this is all just hearsay, so if you hear something else, that's fine, let me know. But I read this way back when, and maybe the Wrestling Observer done a special on him. It's just something I read, but he apparently took a bunch of razor blades and taped them to his fingers. And he was afraid if he got in that dungeon, Stu was going to beat the hell out of him. He was going to cut his way out of there, he said.
Mm-hmm.
Now, I don't know how true that is or not. It could have been a work or whatever. But I do know he was going to, go as a football player down into the dungeon. And he was a little bit nervous about Stu stretching the big muscle man out. And so I don't know. Again, it could be just, someone made that story up. But, Superstar Graham, man, had to look, the body, and could talk, and just over.
Yeah, absolutely. I remember there was one match I watched of they brought Dusty Rhodes up from Florida to wrestle Superstar in Madison Square Garden. And I remember there was one comment that I saw. It just said, there is more charisma in that ring right then than there is in the entire wrestling business now.
Yeah, that's good. That's real good. That's true too, man. Think about that. And I think they wrestled like 3 times. I'm not sure, Dusty and Superstar.
Yeah, I think it was 3.
Okay, and if you watch those matches, I'm not making a dig on Dusty or Superstar, brother. They don't do anything, and everything they do is so over. Because they don't do anything. You know what I'm saying? Like they do a top wrist lock and it's over. Mm-hmm. They do a headlock and it's over. They didn't have to, is my point. That's why I'm saying I don't want people to think I'm browbeating a match when I say they didn't do anything. It's because they didn't have to. That was all the talk, all the hype, and two, like you said, Superstar, more talent, in that ring. And like I said, just a simplest of move, just when a lock up, the people popped every friggin' time, man. That to me, that's getting over.
That is absolutely.
That's over. Like I said, they did what they had to do to keep it over. They didn't have to go in there and do 25 punches to the head or 10 in the corner or a bunch of super kicks or slam each other. They just done the simplest of moves. And every time one done something to the other, the fucking woof, the roof come off, so to say. So yeah, that's why he was also mentioned on here. We could not leave him off this list. It's kind of a way of getting back to, which we'll eventually get to in next season. We'll be getting back to some of our top 10s, why we like this person or why we love that person and some things like that. We've already got some great ones lined up. But Superstar Graham may be someone we take a look at too, Jeremy. You never know.
Oh yeah, definitely should be on the list. Yeah. And this season, we kind of slapped it together initially back in June, where I can't even remember. I saw you say something to somebody on Twitter, and that's when I messaged you. I'm like, fuck it. What do you say? Let's just put the show back together. Yeah. So I had been working on an idea to delve into the championship as a solo show that I was going to do on YouTube.
Right.
But since I already had some of the research in place, I figured let's just roll it into the show, and then we'll figure out if we're going to do a format change afterwards. So that's why we're a little bit different. I have heard from several people that they like this format, though.
Good.
Yeah.
And again, to be a little bit redundant, we're going to go back to several top 10s we got some plans on the next few weeks. We'll see how that goes. But yeah, I'm glad some people are liking this format, man. We appreciate it.
Yeah.
Try not to say as many F-bombs, and that's hard for me to do.
Yeah.
And I know it's sometimes hard for a professor, but we're doing that for a reason too, because hopefully we'll get some more fans that we don't have to put. And it's not all about the fans. It's just us being us. Like I said, we're a couple guys sitting at the bar, having a couple beers, talking wrestling, or driving down the highway to the next town to get to our next booking. And you're just along for the ride, and we hope you put your input in too. And the way you can do it is hit us up on Twitter and let us know. You can hit Jeremy up at the Geek is Cast on Twitter. You can hit me up at Bobby Blaze 744 on Twitter. You can also hit up the joint account at Bell to Bell Blaze on Twitter and let us know what you think, man, because we do like our fan interaction. We appreciate any kind of insight you give to us because, that's what we do it for. We just love wrestling, and we hope you're enjoying a ride along with us. Or I'm not today. I don't think the professor is. I'd tell you if I was. I'm not having a beer right now, but sometime we'll just get on here and have a beer, and hey, it's just a couple guys talking, and we want you to feel like you're just one of the guys having a soda or having a beer with us. But the point being, on the F-bombs, we're trying not to, so using Anchor, and also, we're available on iTunes and Google Play and all these other, wherever you get your fucking podcast at, I'll just say that, because we've got to put the word, what is it, Jeremy? You told me explicit.
Well, yeah. So our shows carry an explicit. They carry the explicit, which means that iTunes and other people push us less to people because, recommend us less because, let's face it, we probably don't need 14-year-olds listening to you and me talk about being backed up or whatever the fuck is shot out of somebody's mouth here recently, But, so, I mean, if we could clean up, we'd reach a larger audience, but you know what, we're not going to change who we are either. So if we can do it without breaking our necks, we'll try. And if not, we're just going to keep doing the stuff we do.
Yeah, I'm not going to guarantee there's not being F-bombs dropped, but we're trying, people.
Indeed.
We're just glad you like it and glad you like the format. And anyway, with that said, I think it's time probably to get into our top 5. I'm going to let you go with number 5 because I know this was your man that we've brought about, this is like the third time we brought him up now from the NWA to the top of this podcast. You mentioned him, and that's number 5, the Nature Boy, Buddy Rogers. Tell us about him.
Yeah, the original Nature Boy. He is the guy who defeated Pat O'Connor for the NWA title. Now, you'll remember Pat O'Connor because that was the guy they wouldn't give a title shot against for Vern Gagne, causing him to leave the NWA. They put the title on Buddy Rogers, the NWA title, and then notice he didn't leave the Northeast. So a couple fellas, you may know these names, Bill Miller and Carl Gotch confront Rogers in Columbus, and Nature Boy leaves with a broken hand. Who knows what happened?
Probably tripped over a bench.
Yeah, probably. And then up in Montreal, he got sidelined by Killer Kowalski, so he had to take some time down after that and lost the title to Lou Thesz in '63, which continued, I believe, a lifelong feud between Rogers and Thesz.
Mm-hmm.
I believe this thing is something that went on for their entire lives. I had always heard, I didn't know for sure, and I can't find anything that indicates otherwise. Nature Boy Buddy Rogers created the figure 4 leg lock.
Yep, I saw that in your notes there. I don't know. As far as I know, that's who they say it is. That's who it was that invented it. So we'll go with that, and I'm sure someone will find some footage from Mexico or Japan or somewhere, and they'll send it out there on Twitter or YouTube or whatever you want to do. But that's what we're going to go with for right now. Nature Boy Buddy Rogers invented the figure 4 leg lock.
And I'm sure that somebody you'll be able to find maybe a standing figure 4 or something along those lines.
Yeah.
But going off the research I could find all the way back to 1957, they have recordings of matches of him winning by submission via leg lock in newspapers and things. Now, that doesn't mean it was the figure 4 necessarily, but we have footage in 1961 of him using the figure 4 leg lock as we know it today.
There you go.
He started to have chest pains while he was WWF champion. So they put him on a lighter schedule, shorter matches, and had Bruno beat him in a 2 or 3 minute match for the title.
Yeah.
I don't know, I would say, he should probably be better known than he is. But of course we have another Nature Boy who took the name, the attitude, and the figure 4 and blew it up into something huge. So
I would say did quite well for himself.
Yeah. Maybe compared to the bright sun that is Ric Flair, Nature Boy Buddy Rogers just gets lost over the ages,
And I happen to know a couple other Nature Boys too. Of course, I got to know the Nature Boy Buddy Landell when I was down in Tennessee. I knew him very well, of course. But I also knew Nature Boy Goldie Rogers up in Canada. And Goldie was a hell of a good dude, man. But he had this long bleached blonde hair, but he had a black beard. But he told me way back when he was breaking into business, he was about 19 years old. And when he took that name, the Nature Boy Goldie Rogers, sometimes when he'd go to a little territory, and back then they had a West Virginia little territory up in Oak Hill, West Virginia, Ashland, Kentucky, Charleston, Huntington, some of these little towns around here. And this was one of the first areas he worked. And I felt, connected to Goldie that way because he actually knew where the hell Ashland, Kentucky was at.
Yeah.
But one of the funny stories was he said when he'd go to some of the bigger towns, especially in the Northeast, some of the veterans would say, Goldie, Buddy Rogers in the building tonight, he's looking for you, took his name. And Goldie, they'd work him, and he'd buy it every time, he said, because he was so fucking scared that, Buddy Rogers was going to show up and whip his ass for taking the name. But he said, that's not why I did it. That's not why I did it. But I guess it, one of those things, just that Nature Boy gimmick. I might as well mention too, there's another Nature Boy, Paul Lee, down in Georgia, Tennessee. I think he lives in Georgia, but he worked down in Tennessee and Georgia, all throughout the South there. That's pretty funny. So, yeah, several Nature Boys, but of course, we're going to go up the main one. Nature Boy Buddy Rogers here as our top 5 because we're doing a WWF/E title. So, we're going to keep him a number 5 there.
Yeah.
And hope you like our order and hope you like who we picked. If not, again, just let us know, man. We're open to suggestions and controversy.
Yep, that's right. Of course, now I did discover there was a battle of the Nature Boys, Buddy Rogers versus Ric Flair at some point in the 70s.
And that's where he passed over to, for sure, that he said, this is the Nature Boy. He gave him that gimmick bestowed upon him correctly. Okay, so really 2 Nature Boys, Buddy Rogers and Ric Flair.
Yeah, and I believe there was a later battle of the Nature Boys between Buddy Landel and Ric Flair, wasn't there?
Yes, there was.
Yeah.
So.
But we'll talk about that some other time. So from there, we're going to end. This stays in order of title holders as well. We're going to go with the legendary Bruno Sammartino.
Had one of the longest WWF/WWE title reigns in history. He first got turned on to weightlifting and wrestling as a young kid. He bench pressed, what was that, way back in 1959? He bench pressed 565 pounds. What I was going to mention earlier was the Italian, where he's Italian, that ethnic, and that's the whole thing up there in the Northeast. And we was talking earlier about defending a title up there. I'm going to let you come back and talk a little bit about San Francisco and some other places. But that was the whole thing. Some of those towns I mentioned, of course, New York, the stronghold there of Madison Square Garden with all the immigrants and the Italians there. They had ethnic champions, you know what I'm saying? We talked about Pedro earlier, getting beat by or beating Ivan Koloff, rather, those type things. And here you had a Russian, Ivan Koloff, beating an Italian. Like you said, you would hate to be in a building at night, the heat that Ivan would have had, because not speaking out of school, it's just the way times were. The ethnicity of that time, those Northeast cities, from Boston, Baltimore, like I said, Detroit, Philly, down that way. And then, of course, your Mainstay right there, the greatest well-known sports arena in the world at Madison Square Garden. And that's where the majority of the people lived at that time. And so that was their Italian strongman, and cheered for him, and Bruno was over that way. And like I said, just one of the longest title reigns ever. And we talked about that earlier. So anyway, what else about the great Bruno that we haven't talked about, Jeremy? Anything special?
Well, so he was going to leave the Northeast at one point and actually go to work for Roy Shire over here in San Francisco.
Oh, okay.
But somehow he got booked for 2 dates at the same time in Boston while he wasn't in that state, and got blacklisted and couldn't wrestle in America because all the promoters had agreed that if you stiff a promoter in one area, we all blacklist you.
Okay.
So Bruno had to go to Canada for a while and kind of stay up there till he had paid his penance, basically.
Nice. Okay. So how long did he work at a certain Calgary, or do you know where he worked at? Or just Toronto, maybe over in Toronto some or something?
I thought it was the Montreal area, but you know what, Bobby,
okay, makes sense.
Of course I didn't write it down.
No, that's okay. I just curious. I'm thinking he had to probably go over to Montreal and Toronto and some of those bigger cities, what I would think, in order to make a living.
You know what? If I remember right, it was the Tunney family, so it was probably based out of Toronto.
See, that's what I was thinking. I wasn't trying to put you on a spot because I didn't even know this history. I was just thinking, being more Northeast and being, not too far from New York there, he had to probably work in Toronto or somewhere. I wouldn't think you'd be out in British Columbia or Calgary or somewhere. I just, Vancouver or wherever I was in British Columbia, and then Calgary, I was thinking. And maybe some of those towns out on the Northeast, Halifax or somewhere, but I was thinking it had to be Montreal or Toronto, and I'd say common sense would probably tell us that he probably stayed up there and probably was protected in the Toronto area, I would imagine.
Yeah, if I remember right, it was for the Tunney family, so
okay.
I believe they were headquartered out of Toronto at the time.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, good deal, man. Great Bruno Sammartino, number 4. And you want to go on from here?
You know what? I just wanted to reflect on something real quick before we did, because this will come up again when we talk about Hulk Hogan. During this time, Irish was considered a non-white ethnicity. Italian was considered a non-white ethnicity. Puerto Rican. Basically, if you were a Catholic in this country in the 1960s, you were not part of mainstream white Anglo-Saxon Protestant society. Yeah, exactly. So, back then, remember, I had
to wash my room.
Oh, sorry. But, we're too young to actually have been there for it. But remember when John Kennedy ran for president, people are like, we can't have a Catholic as president.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. I remember my mom telling me about that. I was born that year, actually.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
But yeah, I just kind of wanted to, just like how much this country has changed that now, none of those things would be considered like particularly ethnic in any way,
Right.
Yeah. Well, from there, we are going to go to the Opie Taylor of pro wrestling, the great Bob Backlund.
Yes. Howdy doody, right?
That's it.
Yeah. So Backlund, man, he won the title February 20th, 1978 at Madison Square Garden, man, getting a pinfall over. We talked about superstar Billy Graham to win the title, man. They said that Billy Graham's foot was on the rope, but, whatever. But anyway, Backlund had his first title reign with a second in WWF history, only second to Bruno's run.
Yep.
And I remember him being a champion because that was the years I was up there. I was talking about being up there in my late teens, 15, 16 years old. Excuse me. And that was their champion, man. And that's who I saw in all the magazines, but I had never seen him wrestle until I didn't see him wrestle live until I was probably about 20, but I could see him on TV like 15, 16, like I said. But I just remember my grandmother, lived in Baltimore, and that was her All-American boy. That was her favorite wrestler that didn't do jobs, because she had a favorite wrestler, and that was S.D. Jones. As crazy as that sounds, that was her favorite wrestler.
Really?
Because I don't even know all the details, but something about the mailman looked a lot like about S.D. Jones, and that was her favorite wrestler.
Okay.
So anyway, Granny, the mail's here, is all I can tell you. Way back when I was 15, 16 years old and stuff, people would say, Bobby Smedley, he's the All-American boy. He played basketball and ran track and, kept his hair cut short and kind of looked like the Howdy Doody Opie Taylor type, kind of kid. So she always used to say, I bet Bob Backlund, looked like you when he was a boy. And so even when I got into wrestling and stuff, she kept Bob Backlund her favorite because, he's that All-American, good-looking boy, and she always thought that about me. I proved otherwise, of course, and grew my hair long and drank a lot of beer, but that's beside the point. But yeah, Backlund, man, and that was the one too. Appeared on some of those. We was talking about after magazines back in the day, and some people sent some out this week. As a matter of fact, Wrestler Weekly did. I think they put some covers where Backlund and Race and Flair was on the cover of those. They did some what was it? Was it Backlund wrestled?
I think Backlund and Bockwinkel wrestled, and I think Backlund and Race wrestled.
Okay, I knew it was something like that. Someone put them magazines out. Backlund, he won the title a second time, and I had forgotten all about this, to be honest with you. But he was in the ring with Bret Hart, and they was going to throw the towel in. And anyway, I guess Stu wouldn't do it, and Owen was there. It was one of the things he's going to screw over his brother as part of an angle. I think this was a short title run. But Helen Hart ends up throwing the towel in that caught Breast the match that Backlund won his second title reign. What did he say? He lost it 3 days later to Diesel in a non-televised match at the Madison Square Garden. And one of the things I read about that was I put in quotes 8 seconds. The reason I put that there, apparently the way they did the match, and he sold it. He beat him Diesel beat Backlund like 8 seconds, but Kevin Nash went on to say that Backlund sold all the way up the aisle, selling his back, and the way he sold it, it helped him get over so much more. And I thought that was really cool, man.
Yeah.
And the other thing was, real brief, a quick story about Backlund. I've got to meet him a couple times. I was backstage at a WWF taping, and I took my best friend up there at the time, and saw a great star. I went up there and met the guys I knew, of course, and that's when Cornette was there and Sean Waltman and some people I knew, so I went in the back and hung out. And Backlund was over being studious as can be. I mean, straight in character. He had his feet on a little suitcase deal. He had his chair, and he was sitting there legitimately reading a book. He was in character the whole time. And my friend popped. I kind of expected that, to be honest with you. But my friend popped big time because we got out there. He's like, man, Bob Backlund, he's just like that, isn't he? Because he was seriously sitting there studying, reading a book like everyone else is going to catering and doing this, doing that. And I was like, yeah, that must be who he is. That's your character, he's Bob Backlund,
Yeah.
And I think my friend finally caught on like, oh, okay, some of these guys live this gimmick 24/7 because that's really who they are, not just that 10 or 20 minutes they're out there in the ring or during a TV promo or whatever. I thought it was really cool at Backlund. Here he was on the road, in Huntington, West Virginia, in the back, just sitting there reading a book, and studying. I thought that's pretty cool. Of course, he's well known for his conditioning too. And the chicken wing, he done that. I guess that's what he beat Brett with, the chicken wing. And anyway, I can't say enough good things about him except for I know my grandmother, that was one of her favorite wrestlers. I put him up there as top babyface wrestler she liked.
Bob Backlund was a legit, just totally legit wrestler. And probably the last, maybe the last legitimate wrestler to really hold the world title scene.
Yeah, he wrestled All-American. Geez. I'll tell you this. How about this? We started talking about a book club. We're going to do this week. We'll have book. We're going to get to that, folks. If you're interested, let us know. I talked to one of our, one of our fans last night. I think it was Sparks, if he's out there. Yeah, I think it was him. We was talking. I'm going to try to get Lenny Denton's book. That's going to be my next book I'm going to get. But I know it's a little bit off topic because there's a couple of books. Me and you both have it. I've already read it. I had it on PDF file. It was Gary Hart's book. That's kind of what started the conversation. Kind of going around the world here, folks, but bear with me. This book I come across, Jeremy, I may put this on my list, and it might be something that our wrestling fans out there will be interested in. Bob Backlund has a book. It's his autobiography. It's called The All-American Boy, Lessons and Stories of Life from Wrestling Legend Bob Backlund. It come out in 2015. It's a 352-page book. It's got interview with Roddy Piper, Ric Flair, the Iron Sheik, and Vince McMahon. And I know you already set up a link for that. So wrestling fans, if you want to, you can get this book by going to tinyurl.com/BB Bob Backlund. Okay? tinyurl.com/BB Bob Backlund. And if you got any other book recommendations out there, like we talked about Stan Hansen's book last week, we've talked about before, I think, The Death of the Territories many episodes ago.
Yep.
Talked about my books, and I know you got Rock Ren's book you're reading right now on history.
Yep.
And like I said, I'm going to read Len Denton's book, The Grappler. I think that's my next wrestling book read that I'm going to get. So if you got suggestions out there, send them in to us because Professor and myself were avid readers. And I think, Jeremy, a lot of our fans are readers as well. They're educated. I know that.
Yeah, we definitely. We kind of hit this thing where our listeners, our fans here of this show, yes, they're wrestling fans, but they're wrestling historians too. Like many of them, I think it was one of our listeners sent me a picture of the 1928 wrestling and boxing rules book from the state of Mississippi.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He said one of these days he'll open it up, but not until he figures out how to preserve it first.
There you go.
Yeah. It's funny, Len Denton. So I watched some matches from Florida Friday night, right?
Okay.
And the Grappler and Rip Oliver versus Hector and Chavo Guerrero.
Okay, that's what you sent me, I think, right?
Yep, I think that's the first match on there, yeah.
I think I'll be watching that this evening.
Yep, it's a hell of a show. Unfortunately, Rick Martel doesn't show up to fight Bockwinkel, so Bockwinkel just stomps the shit out of some other guy.
Yeah.
But it's a good show. What's really awesome? Road Warriors versus Hansen and Harley Race for the AWA.
Oh, yeah.
For the AWA tag titles, yep.
I'll be a couple beers deep by the time that one hits, so I'll be right for it, man. Because I can't recall seeing that, man. Yeah. All right. Well, thank you.
Right. Yep. Let's get on to number 2. Some know him as Terry Bollea, but we all know him as Hulk Hogan.
Yeah. Beat the Iron Sheik on January 23rd, 1984 to win the WWF title. That's the match I was alluding to earlier. I went back and watched that match and the Andre match where he slammed Andre at WrestleMania 3. We probably can't say too much wrong with Hulk Hogan because he changed the world of professional wrestling in 1985, so throughout the 80s. And I was thinking about this. I don't know if I'm wording this right because we know Vince bought up a lot of territories, and you can hate Vince or think, he killed off your favorite territory. But he gave guys a way to make a hell of a lot more money than what they're probably making. And I was thinking maybe actually Hulk Hogan, along with VKM, they might have actually saved wrestling too, because of cable and having this big vision and having such a superstar in Hulk Hogan. I mean, he already appeared in Rocky III at that time. We was talking about that a little bit last week. Just so over. And when he pinned Sheiky Baby on that match I watched the other day, I mean, when he come down the aisle, it was, I mean, the roof was coming off the place, and of course they was playing Eye of the Tiger. That's before he had the All-American, I'm an All-American boy or man or whatever it was.
Yeah.
But, cause he's fresh off of that, like I said, Rocky III. But then, Sheik kicks out of a couple. He kicks out of the leg earlier in the match. I thought, oh, that's great. Like I said, wasn't shitting on the match itself. Just like that's the different kind of stuff I'm used to or I prefer. But he did a back elbow and Sheik sold that, and then he dropped an elbow, and it was like really impressive to see it because it was almost like a movie set looking thing when he dropped it, and then he drops the leg the second time and takes the pin to place. Just absolutely goes nuts, man. And just like I said, Hogan is just so over, it's unreal, man. The most recognized wrestling star worldwide and most popular wrestler of the 1980s. And hell, that just that he still today is so well recognized. I mean, there's no way you can not see his picture and not know who he is anywhere probably in the world. I can imagine.
Yeah. Non-wrestling fans would be able to recognize him.
Yeah.
That's just how it is. What I find funny about Hulk Hogan is he was working for New York, and Vince, I believe it was Vince Sr., told him not to do that bit in Rocky III. Well, he went ahead and did it, so he got fired, and he went to work for Vern.
Mm-hmm.
Vern wouldn't take him serious as a title contender because he wasn't a true wrestler. He was a powerhouse.
Yeah.
Well, by then, Vince Jr. had bought the company from his old man, and Vince was headed the direction he was headed.
Yeah.
He took Hogan. He took Bobby the Brain Heenan, Dr. D. David Schultz, Mean Gene. I mean, he just got to the score there, and then Hulk Hogan was pro wrestling throughout the 80s, and I'd say, and the second time in the 90s, but by then he was long gone from the WWF.
Right.
But for the first time since the 50s, wrestling was occasionally on broadcast network TV instead of a cable channel or syndication.
Yeah.
Saturday night's main event on NBC would draw huge fucking...
Right.
They would draw audiences now that wrestling would shit their pants if a wrestling company saw that. They wouldn't know what to do with that many eyeballs on them.
Right.
The guy was he was huge. Just a gigantic presence on the scene. I'm not a big fan of his work, but I will not knock his place in pro wrestling history. And you talk about McMahon and Hogan saving pro wrestling, you might be right, because guys like Jim Crockett, he was going to go national regardless of what.
Yeah.
It didn't matter what Vince McMahon was doing. Vern had been basically going national since '63.
Yeah.
Every area.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that, how to word it, because I was like, they may have actually saved it. I don't know, but I'm thinking, like you said, Vern he'd been in a lot of places just outside of that Midway territory, and then like I said, Crockett, as we know what happened, they kept expanding, going to Chicago, and then to Denver eventually, then out to California, to L.A. and San Fran and those places. So yeah, it's not like that someone else didn't have the vision. They just didn't. They may have thought about it. They didn't have the vision that Vince did. Yeah. And then he got that vehicle to drive it, and that was Hulk Hogan. He's like, here's the captain of the ship right here, man. Here's our Captain Kirk, so to say. We're going to put this motherfucker in overdrive, and we're going to go coast to coast, and worldwide. Just the right time for everything, too, the way cable was hitting the country at that time, as we all know. So I don't know. I was just putting that out there like with a positive spin on it, for as much as sometimes people think, well, Vince did this and Vince did that. But you know what? Vince done a lot of damn good things, too.
Yeah, he did.
So just wanted to put that out there to people.
Jim Crockett Promotions does not get the credit or the blame it deserves for what happened to wrestling, because he was gobbling up NWA territories left and right.
Yeah.
And by 85, he had a solid lock on the world championship.
Yeah.
It was not, sure. Yeah, it did not go outside his area by 85, and that's why, you start seeing all these other companies start declaring their independence and making their own world champions. Well, if you're the, Fritz down in Dallas, and Ric Flair and Harley Race used to come through, twice a year or 3 times a year, and now all of a sudden nobody's coming through. Well, what do you do?
Yeah.
I mean, that's just, that's just the way it goes.
Yeah. Well, before we go on to number 1 here, Jeremy, I just want to bring this up. all you guys, I didn't even start a timer for this episode. I just want to let people know this will probably go close to an hour, if not over an hour. Like I said, I want everyone to know we're just two guys talking wrestling. We got one more to go, and we're going to finish up here. So I just kind of want to put that out there. Generally, we like to keep our shows around 45 minutes to an hour. If we go over a little bit today, we hope you've enjoyed the ride down the street or the bar, a beer at the bar with us. You know what I'm saying? So, and again, we talked about this earlier. We actually enjoyed, not that I didn't enjoy anything I watched with WWF this week or anything I read about. I enjoyed it a lot more when I was doing the NWA. The pre-NWA, the professor did a lot of homework. He already had it done or done a lot more per his going to start his own podcast thing. So I appreciate that because I learned so much about the pre-NWA, about the world title. NWA, I was like, oh, yeah, this is great, man. This is great. Love the footage that I watched and reading. Same thing with AWA. The thing is, we probably went over on this one here because we had a lot to choose from, but we had to narrow it down to just, that's why we had, 2 honorable mentions, then a special mention, and then our top 5. So I hope you've enjoyed the ride or the beer at the bar with us. But Jeremy, who is number 1 all time on this WWE list of champions?
Well, number 1 is going to be Stone Cold Steve Austin.
Yeah, 6-time world champion right there, 2-time Intercontinental champion, 4-time WWF Tag Team champion. He was a 5th Triple Crown champion and Triple Crown champion in WWE history. He won his first title at WrestleMania 14 and helped beating Shawn Michaels. Sorry to say Brett Michaels. Shit, he don't need to be in a wrestling ring.
No.
Beating Shawn Michaels, and he held it for 91 days. That was his first title reign. And I'll go and let you say a couple words there, and we'll just talk about make this brief about his title reigns. And again, it's not that we didn't want to leave anyone modern or current off this list. This is just our fucking list. Deal with it.
Yeah. I mean, you can disagree and, stuff it in the fucking sack as far as I'm concerned. But Stone Cold Steve Austin, I believe he outsold Hulk Hogan as world champion.
Yes. I think in 98 he did. That's when the year he really busted out on merchandising, and he became the legitimate, from my recollection of traveling a lot back in those days, 97, 98, 99, always watching the competition. I think in 98, Stone Cold Steve Austin, he became the $6 million man, and I think Hogan's merch had been like at $5 million or something, and that was the record for the company at the time. And that year, Stone Cold did like $6 million in merch, and they said he is the $6 million man. It went on to say in this article, and again, I'm just going by memory here. If I'm not mistaken, it said Vince McMahon only made $86 million that year. So, I mean, that's a shitload of money for him to make $80 million and Stone Cold to make $6 million. That's a lot of damn money. It just shows the kind of money they were generating back in the day when Stone Cold, passed Hogan's merch, up and become so over, if you will.
Yeah. Well,
anyway.
Yeah. Stone Cold, I guess it'd be between him and Rock. Yeah. Maybe at this time period, who would just be like the biggest star in wrestling. Stone Cold was cooler than anybody else, I'll tell you that.
He was the cool heel. That's what kind of changed things too. If you remember that, people felt like it was all right to cheer for the heel. Probably one of the first guys for that to happen to, wouldn't you say?
Yeah. I mean, not for you and me, but for the for the audience as a whole.
Yeah. Who they booked for?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean,
cheer for the heels.
Yeah, his launching of Austin 316. He had cool catchphrases. Yeah. He looked like a badass. He whipped everybody's ass in the ring. He talked like a tough guy. Told the boss to kiss his ass. He did all the shit we all wanted to do. Right. And he drank beer at the end of it all. Yep. All the way to the bank. That's it. He won a third title, was over The Rock at WrestleMania 15. I wasn't sure about this one here. It said over Undertaker. I'm not so sure that anyway, it said lasted 55 days for a shortest run of the title. His 5th title was The Rock at WrestleMania 17. It lasted 175 days. And his 6th one was the win over Kurt Angle. My question was on my notes, I put on that 4th title, was the Undertaker champion and he beat him? Was it a deal of him and Kane? What was the deal there? Do you recall that at all? I'm not trying to put you on the spot. I just don't recall that particular match or what happened. Bobby, I would have to go look into that. Yeah. If anyone out there knows on that one title, the one
My notes, my 4th title reign, I'm not so sure that's correct. The other ones all should be correct when he beat Michaels and The Rock and Angle in those places. But yeah, Stone Cold, he took that gimmick, that Stone Cold Killer. He was doing that ringmaster thing that wasn't really getting over. It wasn't really him, and he's his hair's already getting a little bit bald up top or losing some hair, I guess. He shaves his head, he grows a goatee, and this is his whole persona. Just that it just comes out, man. And I think everyone knew from the time he stepped in the ring early on, from way back early in his career, this guy's got something, had the body, he could talk, and he could work, and he got in the ring. That's the thing about Stone Cold. People, I think, respect when you're talking about, flipping off the boss and yelling at the boss and getting over people. So I think people also respected his hard work. He worked his ass off in that ring, man. So I think a lot of people respect that. One other thing I was going to say, too, about the Undertaker deal. I do know this. I haven't listened to a podcast for a while, but about a year ago, he had a guest on there, and he was telling a guest that he was working with working a program with the Undertaker. Now, I don't think he beat him for that championship, just that 4th one. But anyway, he said there's nothing like it in the world when he was in the ring and the Undertaker music hit. He said, even a grown-ass man like myself, he said, just the jitters and the thrill and the electricity that went through your body when that Undertaker's music hit. He said, if you're in the arena as a fan, he said, I'm talking about when I'm in the ring to work with them. He said, I'm getting chill bumps telling the way he was telling his story. I thought that's pretty cool, though, talking about being over. Here you are over as a champion, a grown-ass man, probably in his, early to mid 30s at that time or whatever, and still getting chills like, oh fuck, here comes the Undertaker. I thought that's pretty cool, man. But again, one of those guys you probably can't say good stuff about Stone Cold Steve Austin. I never met him, believe it or not. He left WCW by the time I got there. I do have one fun story I'll tell you real quickly, and I'll let you finish up some things before we get ready to get off here. But I was out in Texas for WCW doing TV tapings, and ended up riding with Chris Adams, of all people. And so we're riding down the street. Of course, he worked that territory. He's over in WCCW and way back in the day. What a star he was. Mm-hmm. So Chris Adams and I driving down the street. I'm driving. We're like heading from Dallas to Corpus Christi or somewhere like that. Long ass drive, and we're just talking. I'm like, well, we just got talking. So he said, he's talking about his wrestling school. And we're just driving down the street, and I'm like drawing a blank, and he's just talking, and I'm just like, this is a long-ass ride or whatever. And he starts talking about this wrestling school. So I just look over, and I kind of smart asses, and I say, did you train anyone I might have heard of or what? Dude, he shot me a look. I looked over at him. He shot me a glare, and I did say kind of smart ass. And I'd worked with Chris a couple of times. How we end up rooming together, I don't know. I'll just leave it at that. People, you do crazy things sometimes. But I looked over. His eyes were like that laser cat burning through me, and he looked at me and goes, you ever fucking heard of Stone Cold Steve Austin? And I'm like, oh shit. I came back to reality real quick, and I'm like, oh fuck, man, I'm sorry, yeah. And he goes, yeah. He goes, yeah. He married Mac's wife, I talk to him all the time. My kids live there. And he started to browbeat me, and I'm like, fuck you, But it was just really funny because he was like, you ever heard of Stone Cold Steve Austin? Like, shit, then it hit me. I was like, I knew that story, but I didn't, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
You're just on a long lost highway out in Texas somewhere. But anyway, Stone Cold, probably can't say enough good things about him, Jeremy. Go ahead and take over a little bit, because I just started thinking about that story as I was telling you that.
Well, I mean, yeah, this was kind of a tricky one because, I was kind of tempted to put Hulk Hogan in this spot, but
yeah.
Stone Cold was probably the last real big, cool guy that held the title. He's kind of the guy that shaped what wrestling would be, where, you'd have tweeners that were kind of, I don't know, where people start choosing who they cheered for, whether it be a heel or a face, where they kind of didn't really do heel and face anymore because of him. He's got a character that I think everybody's been trying to recapture ever since, kind of like everybody did with Gorgeous George before that. So Stone Cold is going to go down as our number one most consequential WWE champion of all time. And with that, I've kind of shot my load there, Bobby.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what. In addition to telling everyone to be careful out there, be kind and stay safe, wear your mask and wash your hands and all that stuff, Professor, I'm just going to say something to you, and I'll leave it at that for this week. And that's this, my friend. You know, you hit me in the head with the fucking coconuts. You give me a chair shop, the Acme chairs. You got me with the damn Algonquin guitars, what the hell they were. I'm just going to say this. I'll let you get away with this stuff too long, man. So you got the name of professor for a reason, because all the knowledge you shared with us and all these notes and stuff, I appreciate it very much. But I'll tell you what I'll do to your ass. I'll Gilligan Island your ass. I'll just leave you to professor. I'll leave your ass out there on a 3-hour cruise and forget about you for a couple of weeks. How about that, professor? We'll just leave your ass out there on Gilligan's Island. Folks, for Jeremy, the professor, Vilmur, this is Bobby Blaze. Thank you very much, wrestling fans. Until next time, see ya!